Can you imagine that just 8 people on the planet own as much wealth as the poorest 3,600,000,000? Think about that. 8 versus half of humanity. Now the question, is this coincidence? The result of these 8 people being a billion times smarter or working a billion times harder? Or are there rules of the game that nobody tells you about? In 1720 in London, something happened that forever changed the world of money. In 1 year, a group of people stole wealth equivalent to trillions of dollars today. They ruined scientists, aristocrats, merchants, even Isaac Newton, the greatest genius of his time. And you know what's most frightening? Their method hasn't become outdated. It became a template. Every few decades, this mechanism launches again. 1929, 1987, 2000, 2008. And every time, money flows from the crowd to a narrow circle of the initiated. Today I'll show you this mechanism. I'll reveal 300 years of financial manipulation. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why you'll never become rich playing by the rules they explain to you. Because they explained the wrong rules. Hit the like button if you're ready to learn the truth. Write your country in the comments. Let's see how far this information spreads. Now, settle in comfortably. We're beginning. But before we start, I'm very curious to know what corner of the world you've joined us from. Write in the comments what country you're from and what time it is for you right now. Hit like if you're ready for a journey into the real history of money. Not the one in textbooks, but the one in the shadows. And settle in comfortably. We're beginning. London, 1720. The city is boiling. Crowds of people fill the streets. But this isn't ordinary hustle. This is madness. People line up outside exchange buildings. Merchants, aristocrats, servants, poets, scientists. Everyone has gone mad with one idea: quick enrichment. In coffee houses, they discuss not news, but stocks. Cooks sell their taverns to buy shares. Widows pawn family jewelry. Even Isaac Newton, the greatest scientist of his time, loses everything today. This is the year that will go down in history as the year of the South Sea bubble. But what happens next goes far beyond one financial crisis. The events of 1720 will lay the foundation for an invisible system that will determine the rules of the money game for the next 300 years. And here the mystery begins. Usually this story is told to us as a cautionary tale about greed. People were foolish, believed in a miracle, and the market punished them. End of story. Lesson learned. But what if I told you this isn't a lesson, but a template? That the events of 1720 weren't a one-time failure, but became the prototype for all subsequent financial systems. That the same mechanisms that enriched a handful of people 300 years ago are working right now, this very second, enriching some and impoverishing others? To understand this, we need to go back a bit. To 1711. Because that's where, in the offices of the British government, what will change the world of money forever is born. Great Britain in the early 18th century is a country in debt. The War of Spanish Succession has emptied the treasury. The government owes a phenomenal sum, nearly £10 million sterling. For comparison, that's approximately £2 billion in today's money. A colossal debt that threatens the stability of the young kingdom. And now, a group of enterprising financiers comes to the government with a brilliant proposal. They will create a company, the South Sea Company. This company will take on the government debt. In exchange, the government will give it a monopoly on trade with Spanish colonies in South America. A monopoly on the riches of the New World: gold, silver, exotic goods. On paper, it sounds perfect. But here's the first layer of truth that's usually omitted. There was almost no real trade. The South Sea Company from the very beginning was not a trading enterprise, but a financial instrument. Its main task was not to transport goods across the ocean, but to manipulate the perception of value, to turn government debt into private shares, to make money from air. Sound familiar? It should. But let's note the key point. This wasn't a scam in the traditional sense. Parliament approved it. The king became governor of the company. This was a legal scheme, blessed at the highest level. And here we come to the first most important law of money that was born 300 years ago. The first law. Wealth is created not by producing goods, but by controlling the perception of value. The South Sea Company didn't create real value. It created a story about future value. And this story, backed by the authority of the state, was sufficient to launch the enrichment machine. But for this machine to work at full capacity, a catalyst was needed. And he appeared in the person of one man, John Blunt. A name worth remembering. Blunt was not an aristocrat. He was the son of a merchant, but possessed an incredible understanding of crowd psychology and financial mechanics. He became director of the South Sea Company and turned it into the most perfect money-pumping machine in human history up to that point. His method was simple and brilliant. First, he created an artificial shortage of shares, released them in limited batches, creating a frenzy. Second, he bribed parliamentarians, ministers, even royals, gave them shares for free or at huge discounts. Now they were personally interested in the price increase and publicly praised the company. Third, and this is key, he gave loans to buy shares. People didn't need their own money. The company lent them money, secured by the same shares. A brilliantly vicious circle. And finally, he launched rumors about incredible profits that would soon flow from the New World. 1720 begins quietly. South Sea Company shares are worth about £128 each. A decent price, but not crazy. In January, the company offers to take on even more government debt. Parliament agrees. Rumors begin that the company is about to conclude a grandiose trade deal with Spain. By February, the price rises to £175. By March, to £330. The city goes mad. In coffeehouses, they talk only about shares. People sell houses, land, family silver. Everyone wants to grab a piece of future wealth. Something psychologically important happens here. People see their neighbors getting rich. A merchant bought shares in January and by March doubled his fortune. A tailor bought in February and in a month earned more than in 10 years of work. Not participating becomes unbearable. Fear of missing out turns into panic. And this brings us to the second most important law. The second law. Money flows where the illusion of quick enrichment without effort is created. Notice, not real enrichment, but the illusion of it. The company showed no profits. Ships brought no gold. But people saw growing numbers on paper and accepted this as wealth. By May, shares are worth £550. By June, an incredible £1,050. In half a year, the price increased eightfold. All of London has turned into a casino. But the most interesting thing, it's not even the South Sea Company. Seeing its success, hundreds of entrepreneurs launch their own companies. And here, real madness begins. Companies appear with the most absurd business plans. A company for extracting silver from lead. A company for trading hair. A company for carrying out an undertaking which shall be revealed later. Yes, people invested money in a company that didn't even announce what it would do, and people bought all these shares. Because in a speculative bubble, logic dies. Only numbers going up matter. Historians will later count about 190 such companies, which will be called bubble companies. They will suck millions of pounds from the economy. But let's return to the main players. While the crowd goes mad, the insiders of the South Sea Company act according to plan. John Blunt and his partners begin selling their shares. Quietly, carefully, in small batches, so as not to cause panic. They bought at £100. They sell at 1,000. A tenfold profit. They turn paper wealth into real, into land, into estates, into gold. And here the third law is revealed. The third law: real wealth is created not during the bubble, but before it and when exiting it. Insiders always know the truth before the crowd. By July 1720, shares reach their peak, about £1,000 per share. The market capitalization of the company exceeds the entire money supply of Great Britain. A company that hasn't earned a penny of real profit is worth more than the entire economy of the country. This is unrealistic. This is unsustainable. Everyone understands this on some level, but no one wants to exit first, because every day of delay is potential profit. And in August, what had to happen happens. The first cracks appear imperceptibly. Several large investors begin selling. The price drops slightly, from £1,000 to £950. Nothing terrible, people think. It's a correction. It's a healthy dip before new growth. But some people know the truth. Company directors have sold their stakes. Government ministers have withdrawn money. They know there's nothing real behind the company. They know that Spanish trade never started, that there are no ships, that there's no gold, that there are only promissory notes and crowd dreams. By the end of August, the price falls to £800. Nervous investors begin selling. This creates pressure. More sales, lower price, more panic. By September, the collapse begins. 900, 800, 700, 600. People who took loans secured by shares find themselves in a trap. The value of collateral falls. Creditors demand additional security, but there is none. People are forced to sell everything: houses, land, jewelry, to cover debts. Remember that the company itself gave loans to buy its shares? Now these loans have turned into a noose around borrowers' necks. They owe the company more than their shares are worth. It's a debt trap. By October, shares are worth £200. By December, less than 100. In 5 months, people lost everything. Isaac Newton, who invested £20,000 at the peak, lost everything. He will later say, "I can calculate the motion of heavenly bodies, but not the madness of crowds." Thousands of families are ruined. Suicides become commonplace. Debtors flee the country, escaping prison. The economy is in ruins. But here's what's interesting, and this is a key point that historians often miss: not everyone lost. Those who sold in May-June, when shares were at their peak, became incredibly wealthy. John Blunt and his partners withdrew millions. Members of Parliament who received shares for free sold them at high prices. Bankers who provided loans seized real assets in payment of debts: houses, land, enterprises. The greatest transfer of wealth in history occurred. Money didn't disappear. It simply flowed from the crowd to the elite, from the naive to the informed, from those who believed in the fairy tale to those who created this fairy tale. And here the fourth fundamental law is born. The fourth law: every financial crisis is a mechanism for redistributing wealth from many to few. Crisis doesn't destroy money, it concentrates it. Autumn and winter, 1720. London is in shock. Parliament convenes for an investigation. People demand justice. They want to see the guilty in prison. A special committee is created. The accounting books of the South Sea Company are examined. And what everyone suspected is revealed: massive corruption. Members of Parliament received bribes in shares. Ministers were on the company's payroll. Even the king's mistresses owned shares. Several company directors are arrested. John Blunt dies in 1733, avoiding prison, but with a tarnished reputation. Some estates are confiscated, though it's a drop in the ocean compared to what was stolen. But, and this is critically important, the system doesn't change. Parliament passes the Bubble Act, which prohibits the creation of joint stock companies without a royal charter. Sounds like a serious measure, right? In reality, this is not protection for the people. This is protection for large, established companies from competition. Now, small entrepreneurs cannot easily attract capital through shares. The monopoly on capital remains with the elite. See the pattern? After the crisis, they don't punish the system. They strengthen the system, but pretend they punished the guilty. The Bank of England, which was a rival of the South Sea Company, emerges from the crisis strengthened. It consolidates power over the financial system. It becomes even more important as an intermediary between the state and money. And here we come to the fifth law, which will manifest itself fully later, but whose roots are in the events of 1720. The fifth law. After each crisis, power centralizes, creating conditions for the next, even larger crisis. Because the fundamental problem is not solved. The problem is that the state needs money for wars, for projects, for maintaining the apparatus, and it's ready to allow financial manipulation if it solves this problem. The state needed Blunt and his company to transfer government debt into private hands. The debt didn't disappear. It simply moved from government books into the pockets of deceived investors. This is not a bug. This is a feature. One might think that after such a catastrophe, humanity would learn its lesson, that we would build a system that would prevent such madness. We didn't learn. Let's fast forward through history. I won't bore you with every crisis, but look at this list. 1819 through 1820. Panic in the USA after a speculative land bubble. 1837. Collapse after a railroad and land speculation boom. 1873. The Great Depression. Yes, there was one in the 19th century, after a stock market crash. 1907. Banking panic in the USA. 1929. The Great Stock Market Crash, the Great Depression. 1987. Black Monday. 2000. The dot-com bubble. 2008. The subprime mortgage crisis. 2020-2021. The bubble of everything. Stocks, crypto, NFTs, stimulated by printing trillions of dollars. Each of these crises follows the same structure as the South Sea bubble. Creation of a story about a new era of wealth. The New World, railroads, the Internet, housing for all, blockchain. Access to easy credit that inflates the bubble, loans secured by shares, margin trading, ninja mortgages, no income, no job, no assets. Mass euphoria and fear of missing out that pulls the crowd in at the peak. Collapse when insiders exit and the crowd is left with debts. Transfer of assets from the crowd to the elite. Banks buy homes after the 2008 crisis. Large funds buy stocks at the bottom in 2020. Pseudo-reforms that actually strengthen centralization of power. Creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913 after the 1907 panic. Dodd-Frank after 2008, which made banks even larger. Why does this repeat? Because the people who control the system benefit from it. For them, crises are not catastrophes, they're opportunities. Opportunities to buy assets cheaply. Opportunities to consolidate power. Opportunities to write off debts to taxpayers. After the 2008 crisis, not a single major banker went to prison. Banks, too big to fail, received trillions in bailout packages. Who paid? Taxpayers. The same people who lost their homes. The John Blunt of the 21st century wears an Armani suit and flies to Davos. But the essence is the same. Now let's talk about the present. Because if you think this is all history, you're deeply mistaken. The laws born in 1720 govern the financial system right now. Let's look at how. First parallel. Creating money from nothing. In 1720, the South Sea Company created value from promises. Today, central banks create trillions of dollars, euros, yen at the push of a button. It's called quantitative easing. Since 2008, the U.S. Federal Reserve has printed more than $8 trillion. The European Central Bank, billions of euros. The Bank of Japan, tens of trillions of yen. Where does this money go? Into the real economy, to ordinary people? No. It goes into the financial system. Banks receive almost free money. They buy assets, stocks, bonds, real estate. Asset prices rise. Who owns assets? The rich. From 2008 to 2023, the wealth of American billionaires grew from $1.5 trillion to more than $5 trillion, tripled in 15 years. The median salary of an American increased by 2%, accounting for inflation. This is not an accident. This is design. Second parallel, the debt trap. In 1720, people took loans secured by shares. Today, people take loans for everything. Mortgages, education, cars, even vacations. Total household debt in the USA exceeds $17 trillion. Student loan debt, 1.7 trillion. Mortgages, 12 trillion. People don't own their homes, banks own them. People don't own their education, they pay for it for decades. And here's the irony. When you're in debt, you can't invest. You can't take risks. You can't create wealth. You're stuck in the wheel, working to pay interest. Meanwhile, the rich take debt not for consumption, but for investment. They borrow at 2 to 3% and invest in assets that grow at 10 to 15%. This is leverage. This is wealth multiplication. Two worlds, two types of debt. One enslaves, the other liberates. Third parallel, insider trading on legal grounds. In 1720, the directors of the South Sea Company knew the truth and sold at the peak. Today we have something even more cynical. Did you know that members of the U.S. Congress were legally allowed to trade stocks based on insider information until 2012? And even after the Stock Act, which supposedly banned this, violations continue. A 2020 study showed that congressional portfolios beat the market by 12% annually. How? They know about laws that will affect industries before these laws become public. They know about contracts, regulations, wars. During COVID in March 2020, when the public was told everything was under control, several senators sold shares worth millions. They were at closed briefings. They knew there would be a lockdown. They saved their money while ordinary Americans lost their savings. This is John Blunt, with the face of a modern politician. Fourth parallel, algorithmic manipulation. In the 18th century, manipulation was manual. Rumors, bribed newspapers, agents inflating frenzy in coffee houses. Today, it's automated. High-frequency trading allows computers to make millions of trades per second. They see your orders and front-run them, buying slightly earlier and selling to you slightly more expensive. It's like someone seeing your cards in poker. Market makers control spreads, liquidity, volatility. They earn in any market direction. You think you're trading in a free market? You're trading in a casino where the dealer sees your cards, and the casino takes a percentage from every bet. Fifth parallel, the culture of quick enrichment. In 1720, people believed that trade with the New World would make them rich without effort. Today, people believe in NFTs, meme stocks, cryptocurrencies with promises of 1000x returns. I'm not saying that cryptocurrency or new technologies are fraud. Some have real value. But the culture that surrounds them is a pure copy of 1720. Hodl, to the moon, diamond hands. These are the modern equivalent of crowds in London coffee houses urging each other not to sell. When Dogecoin, a cryptocurrency created as a joke, reaches a capitalization of $88 billion, we're not in a rational market. We're in a bubble, fueled by memes and euphoria. And when the bubble bursts, and it will burst, they always burst, who will emerge victorious? Those who entered early and exited at the peak. Whales, insiders, those who have information and resources to manipulate the market, and the retail investor who bought at the peak, succumbing to the hype on Reddit or Twitter. He's holding an empty bag. Sixth parallel: bailouts for the elite. The most cynical parallel is what happens after the crash. In 1720, the directors of the South Sea Company were formally punished, but most kept their wealth. The system remained untouched. In 2008, banks collapsed the world economy through irresponsible lending and securitization. What happened? They were saved. Citigroup, Bank of America, AIG received hundreds of billions of dollars in aid. Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley received bank holding company status, giving access to cheap Federal Reserve money. Top managers continued receiving bonuses. Lloyd Blankfein, CEO of Goldman Sachs, received $67.9 million in 2007, the year the crisis began. Meanwhile, 10 million Americans lost their homes. Unemployment reached 10%. Lives destroyed. This is not capitalism. This is feudalism in a suit. Profits are privatized. Losses are socialized. And in 2020, when the pandemic hit the economy, what did governments do? Printed trillions. Where did this money go? The U.S. Federal Reserve bought corporate bonds, including junk ones. They literally saved zombie companies that should have gone bankrupt. Small businesses closed by the hundreds of thousands. Large corporations received aid and bought competitors on the cheap. Amazon, Netflix, Zoom, their stocks soared. Jeff Bezos increased his fortune by $70 billion in 1 year. Retail jobs evaporated. People lost work. But Bezos added wealth equivalent to the GDP of a small country. Let me give you some numbers that illustrate the scale of inequality created by this system. In 1989, the top 1% of Americans owned 23% of all the country's wealth. By 2023, this figure grew to 32%. The bottom 50% of Americans own 2% of all wealth. 2%. Half the country owns less than a statistical error. On a global scale, 1% of the richest people own 43% of all world wealth. 8 people own wealth equal to the wealth of the poorest 3.6 billion people. 8. Against 3.6 billion. And this is not the result of their being 8 times more diligent or 8 times more talented. This is the result of a system that concentrates wealth at the top through mechanisms laid down 300 years ago. Income from capital grows faster than income from labor. It's mathematics. If you have $1 billion invested at 7% annually, you make $70 million a year doing nothing. That's more than thousands of workers will earn in their entire lives. And now remember, where does capital come from? From the concentration created by previous crises and bubbles. Okay, you'll say, all this is terrible. But why don't smart people, economists, politicians, journalists, stop this? Why don't we change the system? The answer is multi-layered, but comes down to several painful truths. First reason, regulatory capture. People who are supposed to regulate the financial system often come from that same system or go there. The phenomenon of the revolving door. An official from the Treasury Department goes to Goldman Sachs. A top manager from J.P. Morgan becomes a presidential advisor. This is not conspiracy theory. This is documented fact. Henry Paulson, U.S. Treasury Secretary during the 2008 crisis, was CEO of Goldman Sachs. He saved the system he himself was part of. This is a Titanic-sized conflict of interest. When those who write the rules and those who play by the rules are the same people or their friends, the rules will be written in favor of the players, not the spectators. Second reason, complexity as a weapon. The financial system is deliberately made complex. Derivatives, swaps, CDOs, CLOs, tranches, leverage. These terms are not just technical jargon. This is a barrier to understanding. When Warren Buffett called derivatives financial weapons of mass destruction In 2003, he was ignored. 5 years later, they almost destroyed the world economy. Complexity protects the system from criticism. If the average person doesn't understand how the system works, he can't effectively demand its change. Third reason, the illusion of participation. Democratization of investing. Apps like Robinhood, access to exchanges, online brokers, create the illusion that everyone can play the game. And technically, it's true. You can buy stocks, but you're playing a completely different game than institutional investors. They have access to information before you. Algorithms working faster than you can blink. Teams of analysts, connections with insiders. Lobbying capabilities to influence regulations. You have an app on your phone and hope. It's like inviting an amateur chess player to play against a computer that sees 30 moves ahead and saying, "Look, the game is fair. Everyone has the same board." Fourth reason, short-term thinking. Politicians think in election cycles, 4 or 5 years. Corporations think in quarterly reports. Traders think in seconds. No one thinks in generations. No one is responsible for long-term consequences. When the Federal Reserve lowers rates and prints money, it creates a temporary boom. Politicians get re-elected. By the time the bill comes in the form of inflation, debt crisis, or collapse, these politicians are already retired, and the problem has become someone else's problem. Fifth reason, system dependency. Here's the scariest truth. We're all dependent on this system. Your pension is invested in the stock market. Your bank holds money in the same system. Your mortgage is securitized and sold to investors. Your country's economy depends on credit issued by banks. If the system truly collapses, it's not just a number on a screen. It's pensions evaporating overnight. It's banks closing doors. It's a chain reaction capable of returning us to the Middle Ages. Therefore, governments must save the system. They're cornered by their own dependency. But this creates moral hazard. When banks know they'll be saved, they take more risks. Because profits are theirs and losses are for taxpayers. It's a vicious circle that makes each next crisis bigger than the previous one. So we've traveled from London in 1720 to today. We've seen that the rules of the game haven't changed in 300 years. They've just become more sophisticated. Now the critical question, what does this mean for you? What can you do knowing these laws? Let me be crystal clear. I'm not saying you're doomed. I'm not saying it's impossible to get rich. I'm saying that if you don't understand the rules, you're playing against a deck stacked against you. First reality. Time is your only advantage. The rich can use leverage, teams of experts, insider information, but they can't buy time. If you start investing at 25 instead of 35, your money works for you for 10 years longer. Thanks to compound interest, this can mean a difference of 2 to 3 times by retirement. Every year of delay costs you exponentially more. Second reality. Debt is a weapon against you. The rich use debt for investments. You must avoid consumer debt like the plague. A credit card at 18% annually is a noose. An auto loan on a depreciating asset is an anchor. A student loan without clear return is shackles. If you're in debt, your first priority is to get out. Not new investments, not cryptocurrency. Paying off debt is a guaranteed return of 15 to 20%, the interest you no longer pay. Third reality. Own productive assets. The poor spend money on things that lose value. Cars, electronics, clothes. The middle class buys things that hold value, a home that might appreciate. The rich buy assets that produce value, stocks paying dividends, real estate generating rent, businesses creating profit. The system is built so that income from capital grows faster than wages. That means you must own capital, even if it's a small share. Buy an index fund. Buy a share in REITs, real estate funds. Create a source of passive income, however small it may be at first, because capital grows exponentially and salary grows linearly. Fourth reality: don't chase bubbles. When everyone is talking about a new stock, new cryptocurrency, new NFT, you're already late. The frenzy means you're buying from those who entered early and are now exiting. Remember the law. Real wealth is created before the bubble, and when exiting it, not during. If you can't explain why an asset is worth its price, don't buy it. Fifth reality: education is your weapon. The system works because people don't understand it. Banks profit from financial illiteracy. Every book you read about finance, investments, economics is a weapon against manipulation. You can't change the system alone, but you can stop being its victim. Understanding how inflation works, interest rates, tax optimization, diversification. This is not just knowledge. This is armor. Sixth reality: the system won't save you. The government will save banks, corporations, the rich. Not you. This is not cynicism. This is history. This is a pattern repeating for 300 years. Your pension, your health, your future, your responsibility. No one else will come and solve this for you. Let's summarize. 3 most important conclusions from everything we talked about today. First conclusion: the system is designed to concentrate wealth, not distribute it. This is not a breakdown of capitalism. This is not a temporary problem. This is a fundamental characteristic of the system that has evolved for 300 years. Every crisis, every bubble, every boom-bust cycle is a mechanism for transferring assets from the uninformed to the informed, from the weak to the strong, from many to few. Understanding this doesn't make you helpless. On the contrary, it frees you from illusions. You stop waiting for the system to be fair and start playing the game that exists, not the one that should be. Second conclusion: information and entry timing determine 90% of the outcome. Your skills, diligence, talent, all of this is important. But in finance, timing is everything. Buying real estate in 2010 after the crash versus in 2007 at the peak is the difference between doubling your capital and bankruptcy. Buying Bitcoin in 2015 versus 2021 is the difference between turning $1,000 into $1 million and losing half your money. Insiders know the timing. They have information. You don't. Therefore, your strategy must be different, long-term, diversified, based on fundamental value, not speculation. Be the turtle in a world of rabbits. Slow and steady accumulation of capital beats speculation in the long run. Third conclusion: financial literacy is a form of self-defense. In a world where money is printed without limits, where debt is stimulated, where complexity is used as a weapon, knowledge is the only defense. Every percentage point you understand, every term you learn, every mechanism you uncover is a step toward freedom. Because financial freedom is not about yachts and mansions. It's about choice, about the ability to say no to a bad boss, about the ability to take a vacation without fear, about the ability to help parents, about the ability to sleep peacefully, knowing that an unexpected bill won't destroy you. This is what the system tries to take from you, and education is your way to take it back. I want to leave you with a warning and a question. Warning: we live in the biggest financial bubble in human history. Global debt exceeds $300 trillion. That's 3 times world GDP. Central banks hold balances in the trillions. Interest rates have been artificially suppressed for decades. Asset prices are detached from fundamental reality. Every previous bubble burst. The South Seas, tulips, railroads, dot-coms, housing. This bubble is bigger than all of them combined. When, not if, but when it bursts, The consequences will be unimaginable. And again, as 300 years ago, as in 2008, as always, those who know the rules will emerge victorious, and the crowd will be left holding an empty bag. The question I leave you with: what are you going to do with this knowledge? You can ignore it. Continue living, hoping that everything will somehow work out, that the government will take care of it, that you'll get lucky, or you can accept the uncomfortable truth. Understand that you're playing a game with rules written against you, and start adapting. Start learning. Start building defense. Time is the only non-renewable resource. Every day you don't act is a day you won't get back. History shows us what will happen next. The patterns are clear. The question is not whether the cycle will repeat. The question is which side of the cycle you'll be on. If this video changed your view of money and the financial system, do 3 things. First, like and subscribe. This is not just an algorithmic request. Content that reveals uncomfortable truths is often suppressed by algorithms. Your activity helps this knowledge reach more people. Second, share this video with 3 people you trust. Not 10. Not 100. With 3. Because this is not entertainment content. This is information that requires attention and reflection. Quality over quantity. And third, most important, act. Not tomorrow. Not with the next paycheck. Today. Open an investment account if you haven't. Buy the first book on finance. Make a budget. Calculate your debt. Take the first step. Because knowledge without action is an illusion of control that's worse than ignorance. In the video description, I've left links to books, resources, and tools that will help you start. Use them. Remember, the system won't change, but you can change. And for you, for your children, for your future, that's the only thing that matters. Thank you for watching to the end. See you in the next video, where we'll continue to reveal what the financial world is silent about. Until then, learn, act, protect yourself.